Hi, I'm Marques Colston. I'm former NFL player. I played 10 years with the New Orleans Saints and currently the founding partner of Champion Venture Partners, a sports-focused investment firm.
10 years. What position do you play?
10 years at wide receiver. So I like to joke and say I got 10 years of city miles. A lot of my peers, they get to run the routes on the outside and kind of stay clean. I was doing all the dirty work.
Very, very good. And is 10 years a long time to be a pro?
Yes, yeah. It's the average career is about 3.5 years. So I was extremely fortunate and blessed. Right situation, right time, and made the most of it.
And is it also, you'll have to, sorry, these might be really simple questions. If you're listening in the US, you might think I'm a complete moron. That's because I know nothing about American football. And is it rare in the US to play your entire career for one club or one team?
It's getting increasingly rare with free agency and the ability to move around and the players have more optionality at this point in the game. So it's becoming increasingly rare just because you see opportunities and most guys tend to move to take advantage of opportunities.
And where did you grow up?
So I'm originally from Central Pennsylvania. So from the Northeast, and playing in New Orleans was an experience in its own right. I'd never been there before I got drafted. So my first impression was a really interesting one. But I love my time down there.
And where did you go to college?
Small school in New York called Hofstra University.
Okay, so you
So
you stayed close to home when you were at college.
yeah, absolutely. I never, like I said, I never really left the Northeast until I got drafted to go play football. So
And so, how many people play college and then don't go pro, or what proportion of people who play college go pro?
man, it's a really really small percentage, particularly at the level that I played at. So there's like the highest level, the Alabamas, the LSU's. I played a level beneath that. So obviously the higher you climb, the chances are better, but it's still a relatively slim chance to get drafted and again beat the 3.5 year average. So it's thin air up here.
Well, and what do you do now? So when did you finish playing?
My last year was 2015.
Okay,
So I'm going
so
on going on about 9 years out now.
yeah, and what do you do now?
I run a venture firm called Champion Venture Partners, and for me, it's really interesting because I've kind of been away from sports for a while. So this is a great opportunity for me to get back into sports. We invest in sports and sports related companies. Anything from teams and clubs to sports tech to sports medicine. So it's just a really really fun time for me to kind of take all of the learnings from the last decade outside of sports and really
Uh-huh.
truly in the business world and kind of bring them back home into sports and be able to do something and create a platform that's we feel is pretty different and creates access for some different folks.
Okay, so what's the purpose of the business? And what are you trying to do differently?
So a venture firm, it is what it is on its face. Our job is to take money from investors, put it into strategic and smart investments, drive the value of those investments and return more money to the investors than we got in the first place. But for us, the how we do it and the who we do it for is what makes us unique. Our focus is really around creating access points in the private investments for the average investor. So as you look at it now, the conversation around sports ownership is really a one-dimensional conversation these days. It's a bunch of really high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth individuals getting access to invest in NFL teams, NHL teams, MLB teams, some professional soccer teams over in Europe. But it's a very very top heavy conversation. It's billion-dollar transactions with ultra high net worth individuals. And what we're doing is we're looking at the entirety of the sports value chain, right? So we'll get access to some teams and club deals, but we want to be in the kind of the picks and shovels of the sports business, right? So like I mentioned before, sports medicine, sports technology, whether it's enhancing player performance, or it's helping, fan engagement or business intelligence for the teams themselves. Real estate and hospitality. So you see what happens with the stadiums. People come in and play you play the game and you play the sport, but there's a bunch of strategic real estate around those arenas. Whether it be parking or it's concessions or it's just really strategic areas where you're starting to see these smart cities around. Some of these organizations. So we're looking at the entirety of the value chain of sports, and we're investing in all of those areas, and we're doing it in a way that, like I mentioned before, we want to create additional access to the high net worth individual, to the athlete, to the parent that is paying into the sports system with all of the club leagues and the travel teams that are popping up in all these sports. As a parent myself who's got kids in club and travel sports, it goes from registration fees to tuition really fast, right? So, so
How,
you
how
you
many
got
how many kids you got?
I've got three. So two are of age. So my oldest, my son is 12.
Uh-huh.
My middle daughter is 9, and then I've got an almost 2 year old. So
Oh,
um,
that's
yeah, we got a
keeping
pretty
you
good spread
keeping your
going.
hands full. Yeah.
Yep.
And what's your 12-year-old play?
He's in a sport every season. So right now he's in football season. He'll transition in the winter into basketball and track. I'll keep him in indoor track just to keep him in shape. And then and then in the spring he plays lacrosse.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's is that how common is lacrosse? And where do you live? Are you back in the Northeast now?
Yeah, back up in New Jersey. So I had to get back to the
Okay.
Northeast. Yeah, I missed it too much.
And so how common is lacrosse as a sport played by boys age 12?
It's getting more and more common, especially
Huh.
specifically in the Northeast. It's a sport that's really growing. The participation is really growing in it. Both boys and girls. My daughter plays lacrosse as well. So for me, just being a former athlete, it's a cool sport to watch because it ties in so many different elements of other sports. You got the hand-eye coordination that comes with, just the stick work. You've got, the stamina of soccer. You've got some of the strategy of basketball. And then with my son, he kind of plays defense, so he's got a little bit of that football physicality in there too.
Are you like a pushy parent? Are you hoping he's going to play professional sports, or are you hoping he's not going to play professional sports?
I'm the guide rails. Whatever he tells me he wants to do, whatever he tells me he wants to do, I'm just going to make sure that he's giving 100% at it, right? So if it's lacrosse this season and you set these goals, I'm gonna hold you accountable to these goals.
Okay.
And once we start something, we're going to finish it. And if we don't like it next season, maybe we try something else. But yeah, I see myself as the guide rails. He's ultimately the driver. I'm just kind of the bumpers to kind of keep you on track to the goals that
And
you set.
and was that the same when you were a kid?
It was similar. My dad was very he kind of coached me in all of my sports. So it was it was a little bit more than what I'm doing with my son. And what I realized in playing the coach role, I tried to coach one season of football, and
Well, the kids or seniors?
the kids, the
Yeah,
kids,
yeah.
yeah. So I actually coached my son's football team last year, and it was a great experience, man. I love just being around the kids and being kind of back in that teacher mode. But there was two things that I found out. One, I was so removed from fundamental football. It was hard for me to take what I knew and like distill it down into something that the kids could understand. But two, like with my son, it was hard to find those times to like switch the hat, right? Because as a coach, you kind of got to constantly be on them, and you got to constantly be teaching. And I could tell like on the car rides home, or some of the times where we had like idle time, I could see it in his face, like, Dad, I don't really want to talk about football right now. So yeah, just kind of getting out of coaching and just going back into fan mode and dad mode. It's kind of recreated that balance that we had. So it's been really good experience.
I'm just curious about the difference in upbringing for you and your kids. Like, did you play lacrosse age 12?
I had no idea lacrosse existed at age 12.
Yeah. Okay. So what were you were what's the difference between your upbringing and your kids' upbringing? Give me some sense of that.
Yeah, so I come from pretty humble beginnings. So like I mentioned earlier, the the money conversation, the finance conversation, the entrepreneurship business. I grew up around really a lot of blue collar folks that went to work every day. So this whole world is new for me, but it's germane for them, right?
Yeah.
And they get an opportunity to be around high level people. And one of the bigger challenges just becomes, I know personally the adversity and the hard times. It kind of has this way of building calluses, and it makes me who I am, and it's what allows me, kind of gives me the foundation to go out and step out, on that limb and step into those uncomfortable things. But for them, the constant challenge is the job is to keep them away from adversity. And at my core, I know adversity is a really good thing, right? When you get to the other side of it. So, just trying to find those moments to almost manufacture some adversity for them so they get the benefits of it. But they're really good kids, and we do our best to kind of keep them grounded and keep them humble, and let them know that the situation that they're in, they're blessed, and that's what
It's
it's supposed to be.
it's tough though, isn't it?
It is.
It's tough. My kids are the same, right? They don't even know. I suppose they don't even know what they don't know, right? Because they live
Yep.
in their own little bubble with their friends, and they don't know that there's a whole other world out here. Um,
Yep.
it's gonna, I've got two older kids, and they eventually step out of school and go, "Oh, blimey, that's a bit of a shock." So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
It's
what strategies have you put in place then? What do you do? What adversity have you inflicted on them?
well, I think that's one of the reasons why sports is a really big thing in our household. It's less about them, going and getting college scholarships and becoming professional athletes. Sports is just a really good place for you to learn how to deal with adversity and learn who you are through the adversity. My wife and I, we've done a good job of, just trying to mix up the environments that we're playing in, make sure that we're getting to different levels of competition. Because at this day and age, with the way that youth sports is layered at the rec level, there's a spectrum, right? The rec level, people are out there to have fun, and at the travel level, people are out there to become pros, and there's a whole spectrum in between. So we try to pick those different spots around the spectrum, just so that, one, on the sports side, if they say that they want to compete at the high level, what you got to see what the highest level looks like.
Yeah,
But two, and I think more on a human level, is people are going to be driven by different things, and their motivations are going to come from different things across this spectrum. And to start to build the awareness around the fact that people are doing this for different reasons, and the intensity is coming from a lot of different places, and you got to internally figure out your way to match that intensity. So we try to mix up the experiences.
in the UK, you'd play sport at school, and then you'd play sort of club sport if you were really keen. Is that when you say travel? Do they play like lacrosse at school, and then they travel as well? Because then you're gonna, at school you're gonna be in a group of people, similar socioeconomic group, but outside in a club you're gonna be, there's gonna be a much bigger range of people.
Yeah, they're not at that. They're not at the age where like the school teams haven't kicked off yet.
Right. Okay.
So over here, they won't get to like their school team until like high school.
Okay.
So everything up until then is either at the rec level, where everyone is kind of participation trophy era. Um,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
there's there's travel, and then there's club, and um, the outcomes are different for each level. But
Okay.
yeah, just trying to figure out how to show up with intensity, and kind of know how to compete at each one is important.
Fab. And what were your career highlights? Like, if you look back, do you have a best game, best season?
Man, so I was just talking about this with somebody, a friend of mine, last week. Man, to the casual fan, I had a really boring career. The team highlight is we were fortunate and blessed enough. We won a Super Bowl in my fourth year as a pro,
Yeah.
and when you win it in your mid 20s, you kind of had this thing in your head like, oh, we did it one time. We're going to get more and more cracks to get back at it. And I won it in year 4 and spent the last 6 years of my career and never really sniffed it again. Uh, yeah, to the casual fan, I had a boring career. Like I was a really consistent player, and I prided myself on consistency. My highlight is one that, in hindsight, I'm able to go back and look at the numbers and look at where I stack up career wise against all of the greats in the game, and I feel really good about what I put together. But there wasn't really one season or one moment that stuck out. That I didn't have that Odell Beckham catch moment or anything like that.
It's funny because I that failing, do you feel in hindsight that the team didn't celebrate that Super Bowl win enough? Because everybody was thinking, we're going to go and do it again and again and again.
It's funny because as a player, you're in that mode. Now the city of New Orleans celebrated; they're still celebrating that win. But it is interesting as a player. Like you kind of give yourself this finite time to celebrate, and then at some point the off season hits, and it's like, all right, I've got to leave that in the past, and I've got to go back and kind of recalibrate and get ready to do this again. But this time, I'm not the underdog. I'm the hunted. Like I'm sitting at the top of the food chain, and everybody is designing their off season program to come knock me off. So
Yeah.
you kind of realize that as an athlete. So the celebration isn't as long as you really want it to be because you got to get back in the lab and try to replicate it.
Okay. And did you felt that sort of people are there trying to knock you off? Is that off-season motivation? Is I need to be better than last season?
1,000%. Because that's the three
It's
years.
dog eat dog.
It's got to be because it's competing at the highest level. So you're not just competing against the teams you're playing against. You're like really competing against this pool of players that some are on other teams, some are on your team. Like
Yeah.
the second string and the third string guy on your team, their ultimate goal is to be a starter. So it's this weird dynamic in that you're literally competing against your teammates while trying to lift them up at the same time, but you're also competing against all the other guys in the league just because there's trades that happen, there's guys that get released on other teams that become acquisitions for your team. So it's kind of this the fight that's in front of you is the team that you're playing, but the invisible fight that's happening all around you is everyone is competing for that spot, everyone's competing for those reps, and it's truly a league of what have you done for me lately. Last year's production doesn't really matter. It's
Huh.
this Sunday comes, can you produce? If you can't produce and you can't produce long enough, you get replaced.
And where do you find the motivation to do that for 10 years? Because some of it must be people just go, this is just hard work. I'm going to do something else.
It's for me, it's always been an internal standard. Like I've had this vision. I had this vision for the way that I wanted to play the game. I had a vision for the value that I wanted to bring to my team. And that is what kept me in it for 10 years. And when I didn't feel that same fire and I didn't feel like I could uphold that standard going into year 11, that's when I also knew that it was time for me to hang it up and go do something else.
And did you walked away or did you get shoved off?
A little bit of both.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So I got
Oh, yeah.
so after my 10th year, I ended up getting released by the Saints.
Right.
And at the time, I could still play. But as you realize as a player, as you get older, it's not your ceiling doesn't change. It's how often can I get to that ceiling?
Yeah.
Right. On a good day, I can still go give you 150 yards. It's just finding that good day. And then it's all right. After that, what does my body feel like trying to get back to do it next week? Right.
Okay.
So when I got released, I still had opportunities. I had teams that were interested in bringing me in. I was just, like I said, I was at a point internally where I knew I couldn't get back to that standard. And at the same time, my family was young. I had my older two at the time. They were just kind of starting daycare, starting to build their friend base, in daycare and early elementary school. And I didn't feel like I wanted to uproot my family at that point in time to go somewhere and maybe be there for 6 months, maybe be there for 2 years. The
Yeah.
uncertainty just didn't make sense to me at that point.
And so, how many professionals retire from football each year? And what do they mostly do once they've retired? Because it's a big, it's a massive transition. It must be, it's so different from whatever you do next is so different from what you've done
Yeah.
that that must be, it must be hard for people to work out what to do. What do people tend to do?
It's all over the place because it's really not a true retirement. Like if you think about retiring from any other line of work, right? There's a planned process. You
Uh-huh.
know it's coming. So you've kind of gotten your business affairs in order at that place. And you know that there's a finite time where I'm going to walk out this door and I'm not coming back. And I've kind of prepared for that. In sports, it's not a true retirement because it's literally you get cut and no one else signs you. And there's not this clear delineation that says, all right, you can't do this anymore. In your mind, you feel like you can do it. Nobody just there's just not people lining up to pay you to do it.
Yeah.
so so it becomes this really ambiguous time to where there is no clear line in the sand, and you've kind of put your singular focus into making sure that I can do this thing at the highest level. So you haven't really laid the groundworks into the next step because you
You
feel
haven't had
like,
time.
yeah, you don't have
You've
the
had a
time.
full-time
And
job and everything else.
exactly. And you just have this thing mentally. If you feel like you're cheating on the game, if I'm doing a whole lot of work outside of the game, I'm not
Yeah.
putting myself in position to excel. So it's a really interesting situation that most people go through. And again, you just don't have the time, you don't have the wherewithal to build that transition plan because you don't most of the time you don't know it's coming.
So what did you do?
I got started on my next phase really early in my career because I've just always been a curious person, always kind of been a tinkerer around technology. So about my fourth year in the league, I started to think about and invest in businesses outside of my day job.
Mhm.
And what it did for me was it started to give me the blueprint to figure out who I was, what I wanted to do, what did I feel like I was good at outside of the game, where were the areas that I really wanted to dig in and learn more outside of the game. So I like to say for about 6 years, I was able to kind of start to put together this runway that just allowed me to get exposure into more often than not the things that I didn't want to do post football. But I was able to build some skill sets, build some relationships, kind of build some of that internal capacity, that internal confidence to say, all right, most of the world is only going to see me as a football player for the rest of my life. But I've started to build these tangible experiences and tangible skill sets to where I don't really care what they say. I know what I can do. And having 6 years to start to figure that out and build those reps and just kind of build that confidence gave me an opportunity to step off the cliff, but it just wasn't as high of a cliff.
And did you make any interesting investments in that 6 years?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What was your favorite investment then?
I'll say my first hands-on investment because I had a couple opportunities to angel invest in some companies, and they were mostly passive. I was co-investing with some other athletes, and those are just kind of you deploy the capital and you sit back and you hope it comes back, 5 or
Yeah.
tenfold. Most of the time, it doesn't. Um, but the most interesting one was I early on I invested in an indoor football team.
Right.
This was back in my hometown. This was probably my fourth or fifth year in the league. I invested really because I saw it as an opportunity. It was a team that was coming into my hometown, and I saw it as a vehicle to, hopefully create some jobs, create some economic impact. But ultimately, there was a lot of community engagement that you can do through a team as a platform. So for me, it was community outreach at scale. Whether it's literacy programs or supporting other youth sports programs in the area. So that was it was never really a financial investment. I wasn't looking for financial returns. It was more of a kind of that double bottom line. That's how I
Yep.
looked at it. And after a year, just kind of being passive, just kind of learning the ropes, shadowing the owner, I thought it'd be a great idea to buy him out and run it by myself for the next 3 years while I was still playing. By the way, um,
Okay, which goes completely against the rule you said, which is you can't have any
exactly.
outside you can't have anything outside the league because you're cheating on the league, right? Okay.
Yep.
And when you say indoor football, you mean indoor American football. You don't mean indoor soccer.
Yep, indoor American football. So the
Okay.
highest
So
highest leagues.
you're now a team owner.
Team owner, president, GM, all the titles, man, all the titles. but it was a really cool experience in that one I got to really understand the inner workings of the game that I was playing on Sundays.
Yeah.
So even going back to New Orleans and playing, like my lens on the game was different. Like I had this routine as a player. I would always kind of walk around the stadium pregame and just kind of take it all in before I went out to warm up. And early on, I was before the indoor football thing. I just walk around with my headphones on, just kind of in my own little world. But post that experience, I'm walking around. I'm looking at sponsorship activations. I'm looking at some of the advertising in the on the jumbotron. I'm like, oh, that's a good campaign. I might
I'd
take a mental
say
note of that.
if New Orleans is up here, how far down was your team in the Northeast?
Oh, we were laying on the ground. Yeah, we were ground level, grassroots level.
Right. Okay.
Um,
And what age were the people playing in your team?
Oh, this was pro.
Okay.
These were grown folks that most of them were realistic about, you know, they weren't on a trajectory to go play in the NFL, right?
Okay.
These were guys that played in college, still had the love for the game, maybe wanted to get to the Canadian Football League, maybe wanted to get a tryout here or there. But these were mostly guys that were playing for love of the game, had day jobs and were kind of doing this in the evenings and at night on the weekends. So it was a really cool experience just to be around some guys that really had true love for the game. But from a business standpoint, really, it's a game of scale. Like it's everything about the business and about the operations of the business is the same. It's the difference with the Saints is you add a few more zeros
On everything.
on everything. Yeah,
Okay. So that gave you some business background, some night school in running a business.
absolutely.
It didn't keep you full-time busy when you got out though.
No, that I stayed in that role for about 3 years. So when that opportunity kind of dried up, I was still actively playing. When that team and that league shut down, I ended up going
Okay.
into the Arena Football League, which was a higher division up of indoor football. But the role that I had was I was just kind of a true minority partner.
Right.
Did some help on the sponsorship side and sat on a couple committees, but it was a lot less day to day. It was two different experiences, but equally important for my development. I think the first one was just really understanding who I was and what I was capable of, and not just what I was capable of. What was I willing to go out and get uncomfortable to learn?
We were chatting before we were recording, and I was saying I don't know. It's my knowledge is not 100%, obviously, but I don't know of any former professional soccer player in the UK who's now a tech VC. And I asked you how many other people you think do what you do in North America, and you said, well, none that you know of either. So, what's your thesis in terms of how do you how do you go and raise money? That's interesting. But also then, what are you looking for in the people that you invest in? How do you decide this one versus that one? Because when it was your own money, there's only you to blame and you can only blame yourself. But once you've gone and raised money from other people,
Mhm.
you've got if you want to raise any more money, you've got to do a decent job.
That's a great question. For us and for me personally, for us as a team, it's really kind of these two different lenses that we got to see through. It's one, is this a company that is truly scalable, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of time in sports, particularly like the earlier stage companies in sports, you'll see them grab one contract or one agreement with a really large partner
Uh huh.
that sets their financials on the right trajectory. So what we've got to do a really good job in our evaluation process is, we see the projections, we see, the trajectory of this business. Like, is the way that you've built the business and the way that you're deriving revenue, is that sustainable? Or does one client going away, does that completely create a different business evaluation or a different business model? So that's trying to decipher through not just the fact that you might have revenue, you might have this product market fit, you might have this client base. Is it something that can be sustained over time? Is it something that, do you have the people? Do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the mindset to continue to grow at the pace that your financials say you're going to grow?
And what stage are you investing at?
We try to get into like what we call growth stage companies, which it typically nets out to about Series A.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So we want to, again, just knowing who we want to get to the table as investors, knowing that we're getting investors that, might be retail investors, they might be athletes, they might be sports execs they're not professional investors.
Okay.
We're trying to de-risk it as much as possible. So getting away from those earlier stage companies, kind of moves a lot of the risk off the table. So we want to be in those Series A, those growth stage companies. And part of our model is really like, we understand who we are. We're not Wall Street guys. We're not a team of Wall Street professionals who've, this is our 10th fund, right? So my team is made up of we're operators, whether it be in the sports industry, whether it be in the technology industry. We're operators that we've built businesses, we've scaled businesses. So our investment thesis kind of has to put that in the forefront.
Yeah.
So we evaluate the companies, we get into, their model and see that it's scalable. Then the second component is we have this kind of investment management firm that's like our internal KPMG, right? Our internal consulting firm. And we kind of see where can we plug our investment team in, either from a business development standpoint, from a fractional executive standpoint, from a marketing and sales and strategic partnership standpoint. Where can we add value to this company to make sure and ensure that this business model is not only scalable, but it's in position to continue to grow? If you're maybe in one sport, can we get you into other sports so we can diversify the revenue streams? Is there another company we have in our portfolio that there's a strategic partnership that makes sense, that everyone can go scale? So that's kind of our thesis, is really baked around who we are as operators and our ability to come in and take a company from not just from point A to point B, but can we take it from point A to point F and, kind of accelerate your growth through the process?
And how many investments are you in at the minute?
We're looking to finish out this current round.
Uh-huh.
We've got 2 placements that we've done in the last month, or 2 months,
Uh-huh.
I should say. And then we've got another 4 or 5 companies that are kind of at that LOI stage we're waiting to deploy
Okay.
into.
Are you still looking for that? You said earlier that you'd invested in that indoor football business because it was sort of double bottom line. Are you still, is it part of your motivation to give a leg up to people who would maybe not otherwise get investment? Are you looking for types of businesses that other people might not be that interested in?
Not as much. Sitting in that fiduciary role, it's tough. Like, you've got to kind of go and find good businesses, great businesses, and kind of give them a platform to make them greater.
Yeah.
Right. So from that standpoint, we've got to be very disciplined in making sure we get into great companies.
Yeah.
That access piece is more so on the other end of the spectrum from the investor standpoint. There are a lot of people that just don't know alternative assets exist. They have no idea how to get into them, and our ability to open up alternatives, specifically sports alternatives, for a different investor base. That's kind of the double bottom line that we're looking at now.
Okay. Okay. So make democratizing the investment rather than democratizing the successful entrepreneurs. And
Yep.
do you end up attracting investment from athletes? Is that a
Yeah, I mean, it's a key part of our thesis. Like, in
yeah.
sports, and obviously being a former athlete, like, I've just kind of, in hindsight, like, I've kind of started to build things that the younger me would have benefited from. I'll say it that way.
What types of things?
So this is one of them. Like
Yeah.
I didn't come from I don't come from Wall Street. I don't come from the Wall Street world. Nobody in my family comes from the Wall Street world. So all of this access is new to me,
Yeah.
right? It's new as of 2006 when I got drafted and everyone saw my contract and said, "Oh, he's got money, let's pitch him." So so this whole world is new to me as of 2006, and a lot of the doors that weren't open, a lot of the mistakes that I made, the successes that I've been able to be a part of, the doors that I have been able to walk through. Like it's really been for me. It's been about, if I'm getting access to these doors, how can I hold it open for people coming behind me? And this platform, CVP as a platform, is really kind of that at scale. There's a lot of people that just don't have access to alternative investments in their portfolio. And there's a lot of really good opportunities out here, and trying to match that investor base with an asset class that is on the rise, and it's one that there are more and more institutional investors trying to get into. So you're following the right trend. It's just trying to introduce new people to that trend.
And how long's the business been going for?
We will we filed paperwork January 1 of 2024. So we are 11 months in.
Aha. And
Yep.
what was your first fund? How much did you raise for your first fund?
So so this round that we're trying to close out is $100 million in equity
Okay.
that we're
Fab.
looking to raise. Yeah.
Excellent. So what were you doing? What businesses did you run between leaving the league and this new venture capital fund?
I've been in a lot of different places, Dom.
What was your favorite?
I've taken something out of every single one, right? So when I left, I got out of venture capital in about 20, right around the pandemic. Even when I got out of the indoor football league, I was still involved in VC. I was sitting on a couple boards. I was advising a bunch of companies, consulting some companies, and right around COVID, my two kids were in elementary school. I ended up, homeschooling those two, and what that meant for me was, obviously no one could really travel at the time, and a lot of my time was just being spent in places where it just wasn't being valued at the level that I thought it should have been valued.
Yeah.
So when the opportunity to just stay put and homeschool my kids came about, it was just like, some of the other stuff, I divested myself from a lot of different things in VC, particularly just because it was just, there's a lot of people that like to talk. There's a lot more talk than action at times.
Yeah.
And the reality is, as a former player, most people are only going to see me as a former player. So I had to spend a lot of time in every single situation I walked into, kind of changing the narrative before I could actually get anything done. So when I left in 2020, I was homeschooling my kids. I just kind of fell into executive coaching, and it was a function of just a lot of different experiences, a lot of different perspectives that weren't corporate.
Hmm.
I ended up finding a platform called Bleaker at the time. It was focused on, supporting executives and professionals of color. And I kind of fell in love with that work. So I did that for about 3 years. I had an opportunity to work with execs at, Brand Jordan and Bolthouse Farms and Nike. And I love the ability to kind of pull from all these different disparate places in my experiences and actually help other professionals, find those light bulb moments and be able to unlock performance in different ways.
Let's dig into that a bit. I'm intrigued how you might take lessons from professional sport and teams. I've, I just think about my own time playing rugby, not at a pro level at all, but just, I'm, often use, maybe the All Blacks as an example with clients. So, in your experience, what can you take from your time playing in a team that won the Super Bowl, right? So high performing team, top of, even if you didn't win the Super Bowl the next 6 seasons, you're still there absolutely at the top stratospheric levels. And there must be things that you do as a group of individuals to turn you into a team that you can then bring into the corporate setting? What are some of those things you coach people on?
The main thing that I kind of stuck, I kind of anchored the practice on was there's three levels of awareness.
Uh-huh.
There's self-awareness that most people kind of talk about. It's understanding who you are, understanding your strengths, your weak areas, understanding what exactly it is that you bring to the table at any given time. And the caveat is that changes from situation to situation. So talking about what football and what team sports teaches you is my value against team A and their scheme might be different than my value versus team B and their scheme,
Uh-huh.
right? And my ability to understand how I show up in each one of those different situations is really important. So at the first level, it's the self-awareness. At the second level is kind of this peripheral awareness. It's understanding what are the factors that are going on around me that influence the value that I and the value prop that I can bring. It could be some a team dynamic. It could be a leadership dynamic within the organization. It could just be this crazy matchup that we have against the defending Super Bowl champions, right? So it's kind of understanding what's going on around you and how the different factors can influence again what it is that you bring to the table. Um, and then the third level is kind of a combination of the two, which is really situational awareness. It's how can I leverage my self awareness into this external factor and create the outcome that I ultimately want. From a sports perspective, I'll give you a real time example. From a
Yeah.
sports perspective, playing wide receiver. So I line up and I run what's called a slant route. It's one of the most basic routes in football. You run three steps and you put your left foot in the ground and you run at a 45-degree angle. You're supposed to catch the ball probably on your second or third step out of the break, right? That's the route on paper. But being a 6'4", 225-pound guy, like the way that I run that route, I'm not trying to run around you. I'm just going to run through you to get to my spot. Now, if I'm, 5'8", 180-pound guy and I'm all about speed and I'm shifty, then the way that I get to that spot is going to be different, right? So that's the self-awareness component. The peripheral awareness component is, all right, I got my assignment is three steps, running a 45-degree angle. That's all well and good until that linebacker is sitting right there where I'm supposed to be, right? So I've got to understand that he's there and what his job is. And I might, instead of screaming in after my three steps, I might have to like throttle down so I don't get my head knocked off. Right. That's kind of understanding the surroundings and understanding what's going on around you. The situational awareness component is there might be this play in the game. It might be fourth down. And I know that this team that I'm playing against, they like to blitz everybody and play man to man with no help. There's no help. That's in clutch time. That's their defense, right? So I know running that same route, fourth down against this opponent. I know if I run my three steps and I put my foot in the ground and I catch this ball, I know that there's nobody else left to catch me, right? So I know that if I execute, I got a touchdown on the other end of this. Versus on the other side, another different situation, we might be winning. I just need this first down to ice the game. I'm going to catch it, and if I fall down, the game's over anyways, right? So it starts with understanding who you are, understanding the game that you're playing, and then what is the actual win in the moment. So kind of taking that framework is what I built my coaching practice around for a lot of execs and entrepreneurs that are looking to create that differentiated value. They kind of might be in a construct that only allows for a certain amount of value, but there's still ways that you can maximize it within the framework of a team so that the team is ultimately successful and you're putting yourself in a position to continue to ascend on that team.
Were there times when you're playing that you are creating an opportunity for somebody else on the team?
1,000%.
Yeah.
A
So I
thousand
mean,
percent.
it's funny because um, you know, work with lots of teams where the individuals have come up, sales manager, sales director, chief revenue officer. Everybody got promoted because they could do the thing they used to do. And then they get to
Hmm.
the top and actually they're not playing as a team. There's no there's no team, actually. It's a series of individuals. And they're not even clear on what the team winning would look like. They are often just trying not to be the guy who drops the ball. As long as nobody can blame me, I'm okay. Whereas in a sports team, that's probably never going to happen because everybody's there. At least everyone who turns up on the pitch is there for the same purpose. Whereas you get to an executive team and the purpose is often really unclear for them all.
You'd be surprised. I'll say it this way. You don't see the good teams, the sustainably good teams in sports mimic that behavior. But you do see a lot of teams that struggle to find that team success. They do have those silos.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you do have those players that are out there like, hey, it's a contract year. I'm trying to get my numbers, right? So it exists, and these are all universal challenges, and that's when culture and leadership, really matters in both areas, and I think that's also where from the top down understand and having everyone on the team understand not just where they contribute to the win, but what a win is for them. And then from the employee up, it's understanding the same things. Like in this role, it might not be the sexy role, but if I have this complementary route and my job is to get the other guy open, then I need to be not just aware of that role, but I kind of need to be compensated and rewarded for doing my job, even though it's not the sexy job that ends in the result.
Yeah.
So all of these things are universal. They're definitely universal challenges.
Fab. Could we shift to some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
What drives you every day?
Internal standard. Like I have a vision for myself. I have a vision for my family. I have a vision for the impact that I want to create. And that's the North Star. Anything else is noise.
Do you know what? In my career hiring people, I've hired lots of people, but I love hiring people who've played sport, team sport, or even like swimmers. Just as you said, internal standards. I was immediately thinking about a number of people because you get up at 5 o'clock every morning on your own, right? Like, it takes this. Who wants to do that? So you just go, well, if you could do that, which is actually just swimming over a black line at the bottom of a pool, hour after hour after hour, I'm going to give you something much more interesting to do. I'm sure that'll be fine. What's your genius?
My ability to synthesize.
Ah,
Obviously, team sports is a lot of experiences kind of baked into one, but just a bunch of various experiences through venture capital, through team ownership, through executive coaching. Been a financial advisor, so I'm a licensed financial advisor. Just being able to take all of those different experiences and kind of synthesize them into one vessel. I think that's kind of become my zone of genius.
fab. What unpopular opinion do you hold?
It's a great one. Let me come back to that one. I want to sit on that one a little bit.
Okay. What's the most significant risk you've taken?
I bet on me. I bet on me my entire life, and will continue to do so.
Okay. How do you measure success outside of business?
Back to that internal standard. Like it's for me, it's always a double bottom line. It's the business success and the business metrics are one thing, but who are you helping? Who are you creating access for? Who are you helping to build in the process? Those are all measures of success for me.
And what do you want to be measured? What do you want to be measured? What do you want to be remembered for?
Definitely more than football. No, no. In all seriousness, like I've always been driven by this belief that the things that I take on, I want to leave them in a better place than I found them. And it's
Okay.
altruistic and it's super high level, but that's just my take in my opinion.
What's the most recent thing you've learned or a new skill you've acquired?
I can't say it's recent, but I will say that I have recently accepted the fact that I know strategy really well.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it is a function of the position that I played, because at playing wide receiver, you were literally a strategist. But it took me a long time to map those two things and claim that for myself as a tangible skill. That's a recent internal win.
Okay. What's the worst business advice you've received?
I just from experience, trusting the experts all the
Ah,
time.
uh-huh.
Um, you know,
Don't you
they're
mean
they're
don't trust them, you mean?
yes, not trusting experts all the time, because there's tangible knowledge, and it's super valuable, but everything comes with context, and you can't ignore the context.
Okay. And you got any books that you have been helpful to you along the way that you think other people should pick up and read? What you got?
Yeah, so I'm actually just on the tail end of a book that I've really enjoyed reading called Hidden Potential.
Uh-huh.
I think the author is Adam Grant, and it's just a really good book, just about what it really means to unlock potential. And he's got this saying in there that he kind of is kind of a theme throughout the book, is the measure of potential is not just in what you've done, it's how far you've traveled to get there. It's a super relevant nugget for a lot of folks that are coming. They have their own internal visions, their own internal standards, but everyone's starting point is drastically different.
Yeah.
So we kind of have this and social media doesn't help, but we kind of have this human condition where we're always comparing ourselves to everyone else's results, but we're discounting the fact that we maybe had to travel a whole hell of a lot further to get to that end result. So that book was really really timely and really relevant in that respect.
That's great. I haven't read that. So that's if the only thing I got out of these podcasts was more book recommendations, I'd do it just for that. That's brilliant. Marcus, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you very much indeed for getting on.
I appreciate you having me, man.